News Radio 1400 KTEM. Good evening. Welcome to the Temple High School Football Coaches Show. Jamie Garrett joined this evening, as always, by, it's his name in the title. Temple head coach Mike Spradlin joining us, and Coach will have defensive coordinator Scott Stewart joining us in just a little bit, because it's always fun to talk defense after a dominating performance like you had Friday night on both sides of the ball. Just an incredible start to the playoffs.
Well, Jamie, I'm glad we're still here. I walked into the Booster Club last night and I said, we're still playing football, so it's an exciting time right now. There's no question about it. I mean, we gave a great effort Friday night in San Marcos, and I know we talked about this last week, but just accomplishing some things that, maybe now we can start thinking a little bit about, this team and what it's doing. And obviously, don't misunderstand me. I don't want our fans or anyone to think, our total focus last week was on A&M Consolidated, and we're totally focused this week on Houston Stratford. This team has been a team I've kept in the day-to-day grind, quite frankly, and I know I talked a little bit last week about how you have to understand the playoffs, and I think our guys do. And so now it's just about focusing on Stratford every day and every practice, and that's where we're at. I mean, we're thinking we want to be a champion, but we can't be a champion unless we're an area champion, and that's kind of the way we've approached things. Great effort by us Friday night. Both offensively and defensively, some great individual efforts against a team we thought going in was a pretty good football team. So, we're a pretty good football team, too. A lot of good things happen to us. Kids playing extremely hard, and we're having fun playing football right here in late November.
And a great job defensively, and we'll talk to Coach Stewart about that. But offensively, after a slow start, you put some points up on the board immediately, and then there was a couple of drives in there. Marcus Hatcher had a fumble. Jeff Carr had a fumble. We haven't seen those types of things all year. So was there, I don't want to say panic, obviously, but was there a sense of the sidelines at all of, okay, what's going on here?
No, not really, Jamie. Your job as a coach and job as players, and particularly in the 11th game, is to overcome that. That's what you do. And, we felt good about the fact that, we really in those two drives, we stopped ourselves. It's just one of those things where you just keep grinding, you keep working. And I thought the transition late in the half was really big. They were driving down. We were up 21-7. We stopped them down there. Ty had an interception down there. And then we were able to take the ball at that point. We wound up, I think at that point we wound up with the only punt that we made in the first half, and then we held them again, and then we were able to go down and score with less than 50 seconds to go and make it a 24-7 game, and I thought that was really, really big, Jamie.
Yeah, you jumped right to it. I think that was the play of the game to me was the connection to Davion Curtis from Chad President that put you in field goal position with 3 seconds left. That was huge because it allowed the second half to start off with A&M. They came out, they changed some stuff up, went to passes, and were able to score in the second half. But because of that field goal at the end of the half, you were still up 2 possessions. It was, no sweat off our back. Let's regroup, refocus, get out there, and they certainly did.
Well, and then you're exactly right, Jamie, and it was a momentum thing. And then, of course, when they did some things different in that opening drive, he kind of nickel and dimed us a little bit coming down the field, and then we were able to score. We scored in 2 plays the next time we got the ball, and I felt like at that point it was pretty much in our favor. And I just can't say enough things. Obviously, one thing that separated us from a year ago, we're a better offensive football team than we were a year ago. I think so. We're somewhere around 560 or 70 a game, but we're a way better defensive football team than we were a year ago. And I was really, really proud of those guys, our defensive staff, our players, what job Coach Stewart's done, all those things. And so, it's just one of those things we're going to keep grinding, keep focused, and got a big one this week. We're fixing to play a really, really good football team, but there's only 32 of us left. And I told our kids, if you expect to turn on the film and see a bad football team, you're not going to see it.
Yeah, especially coming out of a shutout in their first matchup of the playoffs. We're going to talk to Coach Stewart coming up here in a little bit. We're talking with head coach Mike Spradlin now. Coach Stewart loves to talk about that defense. We'll let him do that coming up in segment 2. I think he's doing up-downs in the hallway getting ready for us right now. But it was an incredible performance on both sides of the ball, and it looked like Chad President early, he had 1 rush in the game. And it was a big one. And it was a big one because it was 58 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood. I lose track when it gets that big of a play, but it was a big play. And then he that shows them that he's healthy, that he can run the ball on those zone plays, that on the option plays, and I think that was just as big as the 58 yards themselves.
I think so too, Jamie, and it was an awesome night for us rushing the football. I mean, we really thought we could throw the ball a little bit and went in to do that, but I mean, I'll just say this: we rushed 37 times for 516 yards, and as a coach, you start looking at that and you say, okay, well, every time we hand it off, we've got a potential chance to score with nothing bad happening. And that's kind of where your head goes and where your mind goes. Jeff had almost a 300-yard night. Marcus had almost a 150-yard night. Chad had those yards that he had. And even Devontae Neely came in some cleanup duty and had 40 or 50 yards. So, all goes back to those guys up front. They played awesome. Yeah,
just an incredible. When you're talking about 500-plus yards and you're averaging well over 10 yards a carry, the guys up front are getting that done. As special as Jeff and Marcus and Chad are, and even Devontae coming in, as you mentioned, late in the game, pretty solid up front.
And in a playoff game, against a team, quite frankly, that was touted going in as a very, very good football team. So, it's just you can't do the things we did up front. The things we did offensively and defensively without those guys up front, both sides. So we were really, really pleased with our guys in the trenches Friday night.
You think about Marcus's numbers, and I know stats are just for us to talk about on Tuesdays. They don't really matter on Friday nights as long as you get that W, especially this time of year. But Jeff would have been well over 300 had a call not come back, about 50 yards or so on a touchdown run. But it just goes to show you again that he's got resiliency. This team's got resiliency because he has every right to probably be frustrated and throw his hands up in frustration. Say, I've run a country mile out here this year that's been called back on penalties, probably lost 6, 7, 8 touchdowns this year. But he comes right back and he just keeps fighting and he gets those yards back.
Well, Jamie, let me just address that a little bit. You hear a lot of people talk about penalties reflect discipline. They really don't, and I'll probably get some people that don't think I'm that I'm speaking with a forked tongue, so to speak. But I'm going to tell you, I've learned a while back not to coach the hustle out of kids, and that's a real big deal. I know coaches that do, and if you make all that negativity surrounding any kind of a call or a penalty, I'm going to tell you right now, you'll get your kids playing careful, and I don't want that. I'll be honest with you. I know from time to time our hustle, we may have what I call hustling penalties, and you got to be really, really careful with that. Now, the one the other night on Jeff's call back was a dumb penalty. There's no question about it. It was one of our players said something to one of their players, and so we got a taunting call. That is an undisciplined thing. But just to assume that the referees are always right, number one, and number two, that just because a kid's holding downfield that somehow that suggests he's undisciplined is really, quite frankly, not where I come from. I'm all about what we do offensively. I'm a glass half full guy. You know that. And what we do offensively and defensively requires great effort and great hustle. And guys that are doing that sometimes, are going to there's going to be some things happen if you're really trying to get a guy or you're really hustling. So I just think it's something you got to be real, real careful with. Our guys are great hustlers. They play really hard. And I promise you, I'm not going to coach that out of them.
Well, I can tell you, though, the wide receivers, it's tough for them because they're out there on an island, number one, and they do as much blocking in this offense as offensive linemen. So.
And playing their tail off, Jamie. That's what I'm talking about. They do a great job of blocking. And so the last thing I want to do with those guys is get them running around out there careful and cautious. We've got to have them aggressive. We teach them to be aggressive, and that's the way it works. And I'll be honest with you, we've had some holding calls out there that, this season might be legit. And I'm going to tell you, we've had some that I don't think are even close to being legit. So it's kind of that catch-22. Do I want to teach a kid, he might call that. Well, just go block, son, and we'll hope that if you do it right, he'll get it right.
And it certainly makes it a lot easier to take when you know that, as you mentioned a few moments ago, the offense can score in the blink of an eye. Any run, any play, it certainly helps to make up. A 1st and 20 is not as intimidating when the offense is averaging 15 yards a carry.
Yes, sir. It's just reload and let's go.
Yeah, and it opens up the offense. It's 1st and 20. 90% of the teams out there are thinking pass, and Temple can come out there and realistically expect to be back at second and reasonable after.
And we scored on that drive, Jamie.
Yeah.
We scored on that drive. So, it's just, I'm kind of getting philosophical here, and I know you don't want to spend that much time on that, but our guys are great effort guys. And I'm just telling you, with that comes some things that people assume you shouldn't do. And if you're going to play hard, you're going to play hard.
Well, what amazes me is as often as the defensive secondary, all five of them back there on the defensive side of the ball have faced, whether it's a deep pass or a pass over the middle where they've got to make solid tackles. They've been, aside from the Austin Westlake game, which, again, you talk about the calls there, but they've been clean.
Amen.
Not a lot of grabbing because they haven't had to. And that goes to the defense only giving up, I think, one play all year, 50-plus yards. And that's great, but if every other pass downfield's 15 yards or a 5-yard holding, it doesn't make for a very good defense. But we're going to talk to Coach Stewart coming up in a minute because his defense just played lights out again. You talk about the offense playing, loose and flying around while the defense flying to the ball. And Ty McCorkle, Dennis Jordan, guys had a great night Friday night. We'll talk about that coming up in just a bit with defensive coordinator Scott Stewart. That's on the way next on News Radio 1400 KTEM. News Radio 1400 KTEM, online at ktemnews.com, and on the Radio Pup app. You can always get us on any tablet or smartphone. So always take us with you. Of course, Wildcat football, also heard on ktemnews.com. And here on the Big 1400, and Jamie Garrett back with head coach Mike Spradlin and defensive coordinator Scott Stewart. And Coach Spradlin, we talked about it in the first segment, just an incredible performance by the defense, kind of almost overshadowing at least from those that saw the game, the offensive performance.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jamie, and I know it's become a weekly occurrence to get Coach Stewart on the show, but he's done an awesome job with the defense. And of course, the other night we kind of got challenged a little bit. I mean, their coaches were talking about how they were going to score points on us and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was kind of cool when the game was finally over. Not only did we hold them to 14 points, they got 14. Our defense did. We had 14 defensive points, so they kind of, I guess they came out of a zero, if you really want to look at it that way. Yeah,
just breaking even. Had Chad President, Marcus Hatcher, and Jeff Carr not suited up and not got on the buses on Friday night, the defense would have done good enough to get you in overtime at the very least. And Coach Stewart, I would compare this defensive performance kind of like the blossoming of all that hard work, some of the lumps you took early in the year. But since that Austin Westlake game, I mean, it's hard to really find an entire half of football even where the defense didn't play pretty well to extremely well.
Yes, sir. And again, it's part of the growing process. I mean, we came in with a new system, and these kids have really bought in. And again, we wanted to kind of get it to where we focused on technique, focused on consistency, where we were playing our best ball in November, in December. That's the teams that make the runs are the ones that are making that are playing their best ball at that part of the year. That being said, I'm not okay with bad football in September, but we knew with a lot of new faces and with a lot of people playing positions they've never played before, it was going to be a patience deal, and to a point it still is. I mean, we're still trying to bring some of the young ones along, but our kids play hard, and I think they're starting to really see that the consistency of technique and then just pure unadulterated effort. Good things can happen.
Well, as we had talked to Coach Spradlin in the first segment, this is a team, A&M Consolidated, that has scored 130 points the past 2 weeks heading into the game. As Coach Spradlin has mentioned, their coach thought he could score some points on you. They come out early and find a little bit of success again, getting in the end zone, and it's a pretty tight game early. But at the half, I mean, even late in the first half, you kind of began to see the defense get their feet underneath them a little bit. What were the adjustments that you made early on to cut off what they had success with early?
Well, by nature, I'm pretty aggressive, and I'm willing to do some things against people that maybe you shouldn't do or most people don't do. When I watch film, I try to point out, and when I say I mean the defensive coaching staff, but it really wasn't an adjustment early. It was just like it is every week, the acclimation of the speed. I mean, they do have some very, very talented, skilled kids. They're very fast, and I can't show those kids that, on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday just because we don't if we were doing that, then, gosh, if we had scout teams that looked like that, then we'd be all right. I think early on it was just a matter of, just getting acclimated to the speed. Second half they came out and kind of put the first one down our throat a little bit, and again because they were taking the short chunk and dunks. I have a long history with the offensive coordinator over at Consol, and so I felt pretty comfortable with the plan. We did make some adjustments early in the third quarter, started squeezing down the coverages a little bit. My whole deal with those kind of guys is make them earn it. A lot of them are not patient enough just to take what you give them down the field, and that's been the case with A&M Consolidated or that staff that I've been against for so many years. So I was willing to give up a couple of short ones and make them earn it over the top, and our corners did a great job of keeping everything underneath them.
We're talking with Scott Stewart, defensive coordinator of the Temple Wildcats. Big win, only giving up 14 points, touchdown in the first half, touchdown in the second half. It seemed like after the first half with a lot of running, they came out that first drive of the second half, and did it catch you off guard a little bit that they were willing to come out and throw like they did, considering they didn't do that in the first half?
Right. Off guard is not the case. That's kind of the MO. They've done that to a lot of people. They're going to try to loosen it up. And again, I wanted them to not go over I didn't want to give one up over the top. So I was willing to bend, not break. I mean, the way our offense moved the ball, I didn't want to get uber aggressive and give – cheap ones are what kills you, and it steals the momentum from you. I didn't think they would be patient enough just to take the 5 yards. So we squeezed the coverage down in the second series, the second half, a little bit. I wouldn't say it surprised us. I just didn't want to get too aggressive with coverage and invite them to throw one over the top. I mean, they got some special skill kids, and so just want to keep everything underneath it. And at that point, they were playing catch-up against our offense, and I'll take our offense in that game any day of the week. Yeah,
well, there wasn't much catching up involved because you kind of shut that off after that first drive of the second half, and from there it just there was nothing doing against this Temple defense. And all year long we've been saying that this is a swarming defense, that the team swarms the ball, and you're good at every level. It's a team effort, all that, but you really had some great individual efforts, and you can't look anywhere really besides Ty McCorkle out there in the game that he had on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, he was a statistical nightmare on Friday night. I mean, when you sit back and look at the stats, it was really kind of – I mean, the kid had probably the best game of his career. And I'm going to tell you why is because, I mean, he played a heck of a game. He made the adjustments we wanted him to make. But those guys up front, I mean, we loaded a 5-man box against doubles and dared them to run the ball, and they tried. And the twins up front, and then we had some good play from a sophomore defensive lineman, Taquan Graham. Those guys, I mean, Ty didn't get touched all night. So you're going to have 13 tackles when Now the interceptions, I mean, the kid made, he made some crazy plays. He's coming into his own, and again, at the right time, because he's learning how to attack the football now instead of just playing that position and keeping, Ty was one of those kids that didn't want anything bad to happen, so he tried to keep anything bad from happening, and you can't play this game like this. So he's finally got kind of into attack mode on a consistent basis, and he started to attack the football. He started to knock balls loose. He started to get underneath passing routes. So, I mean, I was very proud of him. I was very proud of all of them. But, yeah, Ty had a heck of a game.
Yeah, also calling Dennis Jordan's number a whole lot Friday night. He had a pretty big game, not only the touchdown, I believe he had the recovery in the end zone, but he seemed to be involved in a lot of what was going on in the backfield pressure-wise, both in the running game and the passing game.
Well, with a fast team, I mean, we had a personnel package that we call Cheetah, and when you go against fast people, we match it with fast people. So one thing those jokers around here can do is they can run. So, we had a package. We took some of our defensive ends and moved them inside. We had a safety playing defensive end all night long in Edward Escobedo. So, I knew they couldn't – well, I knew they would have trouble outrunning us, I'll say that, because they were still very fast. But they didn't get the edge runs. We kind of topped it off and didn't let them get to the highway. And we put some fast kids out there, and Dennis Jordan, he can flat out run, and he had a heck of a game as well.
When you talk about that defensive stand right there with them backed up against their goal line where he scored the touchdown, I believe it was just the play before, maybe 2 plays before, where you thought you had gotten the safety, and they ended up ruling it out of the end zone, which I think was the right call, at least on first look. I haven't seen film, obviously, but you come back, and it just goes to show the resiliency of the defense to not get frustrated by the fact that you didn't get the call you wanted, and to come back out and get that play you wanted the very next play.
Right, and at that point we had started to give some backups, and again, that says something to just the mindset of these kids. I mean, Rogers Franklin was the one who has kind of served as a backup role since we got Quentin back, and he's the one that caused the play on the play before where we thought maybe it's the safety, and then he kind of came in there and laid a lick on the one where the ball actually came out. So, I mean, what we always talk about is I don't care who's in the game. If there's 4 seconds left and we're up 58-0, I'm going to be, I expect to see good football. And these kids are really buying that and taking with it, and they are very conscious of the fact that there's a high expectation on technique and on just we talk all the time about at this level it's not just enough to play hard. I mean that's a necessity that you have to have. But so I was very proud of him.
Defensive coordinator Scott Stewart joining us, and Coach, you face off against the Stratford team coming up this weekend. I've heard size, but of course they've got some playmakers as well. Rakeem Boyd is probably a name you're quite familiar with by now, averaging 9.5 a carry, almost 1,900 yards, less than 200 carries total. So what makes him so special?
Well, what makes him so special is, A, he is a downhill runner, but B, he got about 6'4", 260, 270 average in front of him. I mean, these guys come off the ball. It could not be polar opposite from what we saw a week ago. So, you know, they do a fantastic job of kind of that inside zone. I mean, if you can acclimate it to someone or you could compare it to someone at the next level, they're very Wisconsin-ish. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're huge up front. He's a big kid, 6 foot 200. Those are district stats, you know, so after last game, he has 207 carries for 2,007 yards or something like that. So they're very good at what they do. They can be a little bit one-dimensional, but I'm going to tell you what, he is something to he's something to watch, and so we're going to have to really kind of change gears, if you will, and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and get in. I told Coach Spradlin the other day, I actually get to coach football the way God intended, you know, with the power eye and
running that football.
And yeah, so it's a nice change, but I'm going to tell you what, it causes its own problem in the fact that you know, I mean, I don't even remember the last time I saw the power eye. Yeah. So, you know, they are very good at what they do. They played in the semifinals last year. I mean, they're accustomed to success. We're going to have to go take one from them and you know, see if we can't line up and hit them in the mouth. And again, personnel-wise, we'll have to match up with what they do and kind of get bigger bodies in there. So I look forward to it.
Does that kind of take you back to maybe a 4-3-5, bringing in a bigger body that way, or how do you counter that?
Absolutely. I mean, and what we did last week was put in our cheetah package, and this week we're putting in our jumbo package. So, I mean, what we'll do is we'll take some defensive ends, some skill kids out, and we'll put 4 or 5 D linemen out there. I mean,
you know, I'm a fairly hefty guy, Coach. Can you call it the Jamie package? I mean, the jumbo package, that's not very – you got the cheetah package, that's nice. So I'm the opposite of that. You can call it the Jamie package.
There he is.
Everybody will know exactly what you're talking about.
Stick the J's up. Look on the sideline when you see the
That's
J's
very
up.
similar to an L. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. But defensive coordinator Scott Stewart joining us today on the Temple High School Football Coaches Show. Best of luck to you Friday night, and I look forward to chatting with you again next week.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right, Scott Stewart joining us. We'll come back, wrap things up, get ready for the UMHB Coaches Show. That's coming up at 6:30 tonight with John Wallin and Pete Fredenberg, and that'll come up as soon as we're done here in just a bit on News Radio 1400 KTEM. News Radio 1400 KTEM. Jamie Garrett here with head coach Mike Spradlin. My thanks again to defensive coordinator Scott Stewart for joining us. We're just a few minutes away from the UMHB Coaches Show as UMHB begins their playoff run this Saturday at home against a pretty tough Texas Lutheran team, I believe, is who's coming to town. But, of course, Temple on the road Friday night in Bryan, a stadium that the team knows well, former district foe number 1, but also you got about 6-7 plays in on the field a little earlier this season.
We sure know the locker room well. We got to sit in it for about 6 hours.
Well, they are saying storm Saturday, so let's hope they stay off until Saturday. But Stratford out of Houston, and you asked me when I walked in first thing after our good mornings was, you know, when I say Houston Stratford, what do you think? Well, when I think Houston schools, I think fast. I think they're quick. I think they got a lot of speed. I think they got big playmakers. But Stratford's not that team.
Well, Jamie, I'll tell you, if you want to kind of, and here's the thing, I've asked that question to a lot of our fans because it's kind of the thing about the playoffs that's kind of fun. You really don't have a familiarity with opponents. Stratford's a 12-3 football team a year ago. I mean, they played in the state semifinals last year and got beat by San Antonio Brennan, who wound up winning the state championship. So, I mean, you're looking at a team that's 20-6 now, has won 5 out of 6 playoff games in the last 2 years. So our opponent this week is one of those. And I've told our people, Jamie, that I told our kids when you get down to 32 teams, which is where we're at right now, and you put a film on, no disrespect, but you're not gonna look at a bad football team. I mean, they're all good at this point. The bad ones are gone, and so that's the nature of the playoffs, which is really kind of what makes them fun. Big, huge fun. If I could give you kind of a correlation, I would say Westlake, Lake Travis, possibly Katy, just have that huge up front, 6'4", 6'5", 270, 280, great size up front, defensively 6'2", 6'3", defensive ends, 240, 250 guys, those type of things. Very, very sound, play extremely hard, a real good football team.
And of course, Coach Stewart compared them offensively to Wisconsin. They like to run up in the power eye. They've got the size to do it. On the defensive side of the ball for Temple, you're going to stick to your game plan you've done all year. It's worked for you all year. But when you look at the film, who stands out and what stands out about their defense? Well,
their two safeties are really good football players, and their defense centers around the safeties. They actually run Katie's defense, and Katie's defense it kind of set up around the safeties. So their safeties are really good football players. They're real sound. They get lined up. I mean, a year ago, Jamie, they gave up 134 points in 15 games. They were unbelievable defensively. This year, they've not been quite that, although they did shut out Waltrip the other night. And they've, when you look at it, the most points I think they've given up all year is 31. So I mean, it's but we're good too. I mean, I don't want to get our fans. I'm just telling you, we're facing a really good opponent. And so, but they are too. And I mean, I'm sure they're looking at film saying, well, dadgummit, we got Temple. And that's the way we want them to think. So we're excited about it, Jamie. I mean, it's, we're doing something now. We're kind of in uncharted waters in our kids' lifetime for sure, since 2003, basically. And we're excited about lining up and playing in Bryan, Texas against a real good football team.
Was there any sense of a weight being lifted, or was there a weight at all in regards to that first playoff win?
Jamie, there was. And the reason I say that is I've done this, when we were at Cooper, for example, it had been a while since they'd won a playoff game. And when you get that first one, it's hard to explain, but not only is it going to help us now moving forward this year, it helps us moving forward next year and the next year, because you're setting precedents. You don't have that proverbial, well, they hadn't done this in 11 years, or they haven't, all those type of things. So, you get an opportunity now to become a part of something that you hope continue. So, yeah, I mean, would I say weight lifted? Maybe not a sense of accomplishment. I think it is, but only in the respect that we've done that now. Now we got to go win that second one, which hasn't happened in quite a while.
And certainly every game you play, there's players out there that will be returning next year. They get better because of it. So, and a lot of young players making plays out there, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll get to that game Friday night, pregame 7 o'clock, kickoff 7:30 from Bryan, and we'll hope to get a full game in this time, and hopefully we'll be back this time next week talking about a next round matchup.
Whatever happens, Jamie, I bet we're going to play it sometime. We have to play this one. It's not going to get canceled.
At this point in time, we're not coming home if it is. So that'll be Friday night, 7 o'clock, and of course you can catch tonight's broadcast. If you missed any part of it, you can go to ktemnews.com and listen to the entire broadcast. My thanks to Joe Olivares and imagesbyolivares.com. He does a great job taking pictures every Friday night and has allowed me to use those pictures as I set up the YouTube of this broadcast and our other broadcasts. So he does a great job, and my thanks to him. UMHB Coaches Show on the way next. My thanks again to defensive coordinator Scott Stewart. That'll do it for the Temple High School Football Coaches Show. We hope to be talking to you this time next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock here on News Radio 1400 KTEM.